Chloe had no idea the old man she was mocking in the subway had won 3 Grammy Awards. Welcome back to Hidden Strength Stories. Quick question before we reveal this incredible tale of hidden musical genius. Drop a comment telling us your city, and if you believe true talent deserves recognition regardless of age, hit that subscribe button to help us celebrate these amazing stories. We've all walked past street musicians, haven't we? Made quick assumptions about their talent, their success, their place in the world. But what happened in New York's Times Square subway station will completely revolutionize how you see every artist you encounter. Because sometimes the person you're dismissing as a failed musician might actually be a legendary Grammy winner hiding in plain sight. "This old guy really sucks," shouted 23-year-old Chloe Williams as she passed Harold Bennett's guitar in the Times Square subway station. Her friends, Madison and Zoe, burst into laughter. "He's so old and still playing music on the street. Definitely a failed musician." Harold Bennett, 71 years old, quietly continued focusing on his guitar. The melody emerging from the strings of an old acoustic guitar mixed with the noise of the subway station. His gray hair was messy, his face lined with wrinkles. But as his fingers danced with the strings, they carried the traces of 50 years of experience. Chloe was a social media influencer who was starting to be recognized as a new talent in the music industry. She had 500 followers and saw herself as the future of the music world. Everyone who looked at Harold would think the same thing. A failed old street musician. No one could know who he really was. In Harold's small one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, there were no clues on the walls. Old furniture, simple belongings, a modest life. A typical retiree's home. But at the very bottom of the bedroom closet, carefully hidden, was a box. Inside were the most prestigious music awards of an earlier era. 3 Grammy Awards, Billboard Music Awards, Rolling Stone magazine cover pages, and most importantly, platinum album certificates from the 1970s. Harold Bennett wasn't just a street musician. From the late 1960s to the early 1980s, he was known as Harold "Harmony" Bennett, the legendary guitarist of rock music. Founder and lead guitarist of the Midnight Echoes, his albums sold millions, a Grammy-winning music icon. So why was he now playing music in the New York subway? Harold's tragic story began with changes in the music industry. In the mid-1980s, musical styles began to change. Rock music was giving way to pop and electronic music. The Midnight Echoes albums were no longer selling as well as before. Creative differences emerged among band members. Harold wanted to stay with classic rock style, while others wanted to try modern sounds. The band broke up in 1987. Harold started a solo career but couldn't succeed. The music industry was now looking for young, new faces. Companies found Harold old-fashioned. In 1995, his wife Barbara got cancer. Treatment costs consumed all of Harold's savings. He even had to sell his Grammy Awards. He only kept one. When Barbara died in 2010, Harold became completely isolated. They had no children. Friends from the music world forgot him. He became a man aging alone. For the past 10 years, he'd been playing in subway stations. Not for money, just to keep music alive. Music was his breath. Harold would come to Times Square subway station every morning and take his place in the corner. He would open his guitar and play old classics, but no one listened. Young people would pass by him quickly, sometimes making derogatory comments. "Why are these old guys still trying? Street musicians are really awful." "He's definitely never been successful." Harold would quietly continue playing. He was no longer chasing fame. He just wanted music to live within him. Some people would throw money, but most didn't notice his talent. To them, Harold was just an old musician on the street. Chloe Williams was a 23-year-old influencer who created music content on TikTok and Instagram. With 500 followers, Chloe promoted herself as a new generation music icon. She had no musical education but covered modern pop songs, selling them as her own style. Her followers saw her as an amazing musician. That day, when she came to Times Square with her friends Madison and Zoe, she noticed Harold. "Look at that old man," Chloe said loudly. "Still playing music on the street. He's definitely never been successful." Madison agreed. "Yes, real musicians work in studios, not on the street." Zoe pulled out her phone. Let's film a video. We'll share it as failed street musician. Chloe approached Harold and started filming. Hello, followers. There's an uncle playing on the street here. How long have you been playing here? Harold looked up at Chloe. For a long time, young lady. Have you ever been famous? Or have you always played on the street? A painful expression appeared on Harold's face. Everyone has a story, Chloe laughed. So, you've never been successful? I'm an influencer. I have 500, 0 followers. Real musicians aren't like this. What is real music, young lady? Harold asked calmly. Real music is music that goes viral, gets millions of listens, not playing on the street like you. Chloe continued to belittle Harold. I bet you can only play simple songs. I make modern music. You're old-fashioned. Harold smiled. I wonder what songs you know. I know everything. You only play old rock pieces. Harold tuned his guitar. Well, shall we play something together? Chloe was surprised, but didn't want to back down. Sure, but let me teach you how to play. People around began watching this interesting encounter. Chloe suggested a popular song, Ed Sheeran's Perfect. Do you know this song? She asked condescendingly. Harold nodded and began to play. But what he played was very different from what Chloe expected. Harold's fingers performed a magical dance on the guitar strings. He embellished a simple pop song with complex harmonies, improvisations, and technical mastery. People around began to stop. This wasn't normal street musicianship. Chloe tried to sing, but Harold's guitar was so complex and powerful that she had trouble finding her voice. How? How are you playing this? She asked, bewildered. Harold smiled. 50 years of experience. Harold turned to Chloe. Now let me play you an old piece. Maybe you'll know it. He took his guitar and started with a familiar riff. But this riff was one of music history's most famous guitar riffs. One of the older people around shouted, Isn't this Thunder Road? Harold nodded and continued. What he was playing was a legendary rock hit from the 1970s. But Harold wasn't just playing it, he was living it. Every note, every bend, every vibrato was perfect. This wasn't amateur level. This was professional level. Chloe stood frozen, watching Harold. Being able to play at this level required years of training and experience. Are you a professional musician? She asked. Harold smiled, but didn't answer, continuing to play. The crowd continued to grow. People in their 40s and 50s began watching Harold carefully. A middle-aged man stepped forward from among them. Wait a minute, he said, examining Harold closely. Aren't you Harold Harmony Bennett? The crowd fell silent. Harold stopped playing, slowly raised his head. Harold Bennett from the Midnight Echoes, the man continued excitedly. You were my idol in my youth. Chloe and her friends looked at each other in bewilderment. Who is this Harold Bennett? Madison whispered. The older man explained. He was one of the biggest rock stars of the 1970s. He has 3 Grammy Awards, sold millions of albums. Chloe couldn't believe it. This isn't possible. He's just a street musician. The older man pulled out his phone and searched on Google. Look here, Harold Harmony Bennett, The Midnight Echoes, photos from the 1970s, scenes from Grammy ceremonies. Album covers appeared on the screen. Young Harold's face was identical to old Harold's face. Incredible, said someone else from the crowd. He really is Harold Bennett. Chloe had dropped her phone. The man she had just belittled was one of music history's legends. But why are you playing on the street? She asked with a trembling voice. Harold answered calmly. Music can be played anywhere. What matters is the heart of music. The video Chloe shot began going viral on social media. But unexpectedly, people were praising Harold's talent and criticizing Chloe. Comments. This girl doesn't even recognize a great musician. Harold Bennett is a legend. This young girl is disrespectful. The street musician she called out is Grammy awarded. Chloe tried to delete the video in panic, but it was too late. The video had been shared thousands of times. That evening, local news announced the story. Grammy-winning musician found playing on street. The next morning, music journalists flocked to Times Square to find Harold. Harold was in his usual spot with his guitar. Mr. Bennett, said a journalist, why do you play on the street? Harold smiled. Music isn't something to be locked up in studios. Music lives among people, Chloe cried at home that night. All her social media accounts were filled with negative comments. Her followers were decreasing. Brand deals were being canceled. But what really hurt was realizing how disrespectful her behavior had been. The next day, she went to Times Square to find Harold. Harold was in the same corner again. When Chloe approached, Harold recognized her. "Hello, young lady." "Mr. Bennett, I'm so sorry. I was very disrespectful." Harold stopped playing and looked at her. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because I judged you without knowing you. You're a legendary musician and I." Harold laughed. "Young lady, are you apologizing because I'm famous?" Chloe looked confused. "What you should apologize for isn't not knowing I'm famous. It's disrespecting me as a human being." Harold continued, "Music's value isn't in going viral. It's in touching hearts. I play on the street because music lives here, among people." "So how can I become a real musician?" Chloe asked. "First learn to listen, then learn to feel. If you focus on going viral, you'll miss music's soul." Chloe nodded through her tears. "Will you teach me?" Harold smiled. "Music isn't taught, it's shared." Harold taught Chloe a simple melody. Not viral, just beautiful. "The most important thing in music isn't technique, it's emotion," Harold said. "People feel emotion." Chloe began learning from Harold. She used her social media accounts to spread Harold's story, but this time with respect. When the music industry learned that Harold was still alive and continuing to play, they were shocked. Record companies called him. "Mr. Bennett, would you like to record a new album?" Harold thought. "But I'll play the way I want. No marketing tricks." "Of course. You're a legend." Harold recorded his first album in 15 years. Street Echoes, Street Stories. The album contained both his old hits and new pieces he composed at the subway station. Chloe was featured as backing vocals on the album, but only the way Harold taught her, with respect. Street Echoes received great acclaim. Critics called it Harold's mature voice. It was nominated for Grammy in the Best Folk Album category. At the ceremony, when Harold took the stage, he received a standing ovation. "This award isn't just mine," he said. "It belongs to everyone who shows that music can live on the streets." Chloe completely changed her musical understanding with what she learned from Harold. She no longer played to go viral, but to make music. Her follower count decreased, but her music became more authentic. "Harold taught me that music isn't measured by follower counts," she said in an interview. Harold became Chloe's mentor. They would meet every week and play together. "Young musicians always want to become famous quickly," Harold would say. "But real music needs time." Chloe now played with Harold at subway stations, but this time as a student. Harold began giving music lessons to share his experience with young people. He started a program called Harmony School of Real Music. His first lesson was, "Music is not for ego, it's for connection." National Geographic made a documentary about Harold's story. From Grammy to Street, the Harold Bennett story. Chloe was also featured in the documentary, explaining how she learned from Harold. "He taught me the real meaning of music," she said. "Fame is temporary, but music is eternal." 5 years later, Harold was still playing at subway stations, but he wasn't alone anymore. Dozens of young musicians were playing with him, learning from him. Chloe, now 30, had become a respectful musician. She didn't win a Grammy, but gained something more valuable: true musical understanding. A special concert was organized at Times Square for Harold's 75th birthday. Thousands of people came. Chloe opened. "This man taught me the real meaning of music. Harold Bennett isn't just a legend, he's a teacher." When Harold took the stage, he said, "Music is everywhere. In stadiums, in studios, but most importantly in our hearts." Harold's story changed the music world. Young musicians now focused on music quality rather than going viral. This situation, called the Harold Effect, brought an authenticity breeze to the music industry. Harold Bennett's story showed that talent isn't limited by age. The man playing at a subway station at 71 was actually one of music history's legends. When Chloe Williams belittled Harold that day, she didn't know who was standing before her. But this encounter changed both Chloe's and society's understanding of music. Most importantly, Harold never gave up on music. Despite the difficulties, despite the hardships he experienced, he continued making music. Grammy Awards were temporary, but real music was permanent. Harold Bennett had proven this truth by living it. And young people like Chloe learned that the old musician on the street might be the world's greatest master. This story teaches us, age is just a number, but talent is timeless. Showing respect to everyone isn't just courtesy, it's being open to great surprises. Because you never know how the person in front of you might change your life. Have you ever dismissed someone's talent because of their age or circumstances, only to discover their incredible abilities later? Harold's story reminds us that true artistry doesn't need a stage or spotlight. Sometimes the most beautiful music happens in the most unexpected places. If this story inspired you to listen more closely to the artists around you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below.